Martin.
Hello.
Hello. So you've played in lots of bands.
I have.
And you've been doing that for a long time?
20 plus years.
Okay,
yeah.
so you've got quite a lot of experience of
My first record
the problems and...
First record came out in 91, so yeah, do the maths.
Okay, all right. I'm just going to ask you some questions about the rehearsal process. So how do you prepare for a rehearsal?
Well, some rehearsals are ongoing processes, so you know what you're going to do. But if we're about to embark on arranging a new song or writing or getting ready for a gig, what we'll normally do is actually sit and talk for about 20 minutes before the rehearsal about what we want to achieve, how much time we're going to give each task that we have in the rehearsal. So that might be something like, okay, we've got to work out the drum pattern for this song. Let's give that half an hour at the beginning, and then the next half an hour we're going to try and do this. And usually the plans, if they're reasonable, tend to come together, and it usually works. Sometimes you have to change the plan, of course, but there's always 15-20 minutes chat, either by email or actually in person before I go in.
Mm-hmm. And what do you bring with you?
Well, I'm just a singer, so I just bring myself. But the band I'm in currently, we need to bring all our equipment, obviously. So the guitarist, all his pedals, make sure he's got all his leads and spare strings and all that stuff. And the drummer needs to bring his sticks and a variety of sticks. Also, in this band I play bass, so obviously I need to make sure I've got bass available and leads, and we also use a computer and an audio interface. So it's little things that can act as hurdles in a rehearsal. Like, for instance, my bass is an active bass, so it has a battery, so I always make sure I've got a spare battery. So we have an equipment list. It might well be in our heads, but we have an equipment list of what we need.
Okay.
And pen and paper.
Pen and paper
Always
for writing
pen
on
and
your
paper.
lyric sheets.
Yeah, lyric sheets, chord charts, everything.
Okay.
And it goes on. And something to record what we're doing, because if we say our guitarist comes up with something great and we're like, oh, stop, right, let's record that so we don't forget it. And we come away at the end of each rehearsal normally with about 6 or 7 recordings, which we then either share via Dropbox or email to each other.
Nice.
And they're all nicely labelled, and we can go back in the week and listen back to them and go, oh yeah, that's how that bit went.
That's a good way to develop as a band. How do you go about developing personally during a rehearsal?
Well, I mean, I've been doing a very long time, and you inevitably you learn what you're good at and what you're not so good at and what you need to work at. So if there, for instance, when I sang, if there was a song that I was struggling with, I would go home and I would work on techniques to get that bit better. Or if I couldn't do it, I'd suggest maybe changing the key. As a bass player, and I'm not the world's best bass player, a member of the band might say, oh, can you try this sort of bass line? And I might not be able to play it. So guess what? I go home, I practice, and I try and play it. And if I really can't play it, I come up with something as close as possible.
Okay, cool. There's a question about developing as a band. You've sort of covered that a little bit. How about communicating as a band when you're in rehearsals? How does that work?
I think communication obviously is really important in the rehearsal, but also outside of the rehearsal. So you have to be sort of constantly talking to each other, whether it's on the phone or by email or you meet up, whichever way. But it actually, in the rehearsals, it's about having, I think, respect for the people you're playing with. And so point 1 is giving everybody a chance to voice their opinions. That's really important. And point 2 is that people listen to those opinions and don't just sort of sit there being quiet because they're meant to be quiet, but actually listen and give their opinion. And if you build up a really good working relationship with the people you're playing with, you can find that you can get a lot done in 3 hours rehearsal. But a lot of it is because it's knowing when to shut up.
Yeah. It
really is. Yeah. It's knowing when to shut up, because there are other people in the room and they might have something really wonderful to bring to the table.
Yeah. What problems do you come across during rehearsals?
Well, thankfully not that many, but that's because I've been doing it a long time and I know what...
Have you got any from the past that you can remember?
Oh, there are several. I mean, there are so many things that can go wrong. A lot of them relate to what I was saying earlier about not having the right equipment,
Yeah.
or being in a rehearsal with somebody who is not listening. Listening is more important than playing. Or when you're so for example, I remember working with a guitarist once who I won't mention his name, who would do that thing where he would sit in the corner and would be have with the volume down but twiddling away on his guitar, and the other three members of the band would try to have a serious discussion about an arrangement or a song, and you feel like you're just having to constantly repeat yourself. If you approach it with genuine respect for each other, the arguments and the rows and the storming out and the egos don't become so much of a problem, because if people feel like they're being listened to and that people feel like their opinions are valuable, then ego becomes less of a problem.
Yeah. Would you suggest, in terms of a college band, would you suggest setting some ground rules first?
Absolutely,
Yeah.
yes. And I think ground rule number one is about respect. And if you truly understand what that means listening to people and taking their opinions on board. It doesn't mean you have to agree with them. You can have discussions, and occasionally those discussions might become a little bit heated, but people want to be respected. So number one is respect, number two is bring your equipment, number three is be on time,
Yeah.
and number four is plan.
Yeah. Okay. Any last bit of advice for a new band that's got a short amount of time to get prepared for a gig?
Yes, play less and you'll get more done. And what I mean by that is talk to each other about what you want to try and achieve. Get a marker pen, write it down on the wall, break down what it is you want to achieve into little chunks so it doesn't feel so intimidating.
Okay.
Don't sort of think, we've got to get 7 songs ready for a gig.
Yeah.
Think of that as 7 different things you need to do, and within those think of that as, okay, we've got 5 things we need to do for each of them, but they all seem quite achievable if they're small tasks.
Great.
So small tasks. It's like trying to climb a ladder with only 2 rungs on it is really impossible.
Yeah.
Sit lots of rungs on it.
Okay.
And you'll be fine.
Cool. Thank you, Martin. That's great.
Pleasure. Goodbye.